Paramhansa Yogananda said that this world was created for our education and for our entertainment. And oh, how few are educated and how few are truly entertained. And I think at some point, he also mentioned this in terms of the subject that I wanted to continue our discussion from last week, which was about sleep and one of the phenomena of sleep, which is dreaming. And he applied that thought also education and for our entertainment to the world of dreams. And it's something universal. All people dream. It seems to be that case. We may not remember our dreams, but dreams are something that is part of the human condition. And you can even see this probably in animals as well. And who knows exactly what the function of dreaming is. Many people have postulated, of course, that it helps to organize our thoughts during the day, make some dreams. You might say it's, it kind of gives us perhaps even calms our moods, helps the brain grow, integrate itself. There's been some studies that showed that people that dream are also tend to be more creative. But I wonder if that's always true, because maybe it's only those people that remember their dreams well. Maybe it helps creativity in some way. Some people say emotional neuroses or knots. It releases some of the tension from that. And we know that psychoanalysts, Freud example, he said dreams allow us to satisfy certain fantasies or instincts and urges that society suppresses, and we work it out in our dreams. But whatever it is generally, it's a phenomena that over the centuries, over the millennia, people have noticed within themselves, and consequently, there's been a great curiosity about it. And Paramhansa Yogananda too addressed these in some of his writings, in his early writings, and in his lessons, preceptor lessons, and also the lessons that Self-Realization Fellowship sends out now. Not in the early lessons, you have to go all the way toward the end, if I remember right. But Yogananda Ji, he said that dreaming is a subconscious state of mind of when we withdraw the prana from the senses, and that prana being withdrawn, it's combined with our imagination, which is the visualizing element of the conscious mind. So you combine these two, and we end up dreaming. But now we talked about sleep last week, but while dreaming, the body is not really resting. It's not the same thing as you're not getting rest when you're sleeping or when you're dreaming, because the mind becomes very active, and also the heart rate increases, and these things, there's an action going on inside, but yet you're withdrawn. The senses have been internalized. And Yogananda said, and this is the case, that for most people, these dreams are totally subconscious, that it's just an element of play. And Yogananda said, much of it, don't waste your time in subconscious dreaming. He didn't really say it's a bad thing, but he says it's a waste of time to spend too much time in subconscious dreaming. And when we talk about the subject of dreaming, it stimulates some people to want to dabble a lot in what does this mean? What does that mean? All the various meanings of it. But most of the meanings and the symbolism that dreams have for us tends to be very personal to our individual subconsciousness. And so in that regard, people, what does this mean? What does that mean?
Jaya, your sound is gone.
Okay. Am I back now?
There you are. If you come
Okay.
back maybe 20, 30 seconds because we were not able to
Okay.
hear you.
Okay. Somehow my microphone disengaged. As I was saying, Masters said that don't waste too much time trying to analyze your dreams. He says enjoy them. They can be instructive because most of them are subconscious, and subconsciousness, the meaning of those dreams is private to you. So he recommended that you don't be sharing your dreams with everybody, asking them, what does this mean? What does that mean? Because the best way to come to that understanding is to develop our own intuitional ability. Another person can say, well, maybe this means that, maybe that means another thing, but you'll hear that on the intellectual mind, and that doesn't give you true understanding of what that dream is about. Truth in this regard is intuitional. You need to listen to your intuitional ability. And if a dream is recurring to you, take it within and think about it. And in your meditation, you can come to an intuitional understanding of that dream. But so the question comes, why, if Master said that we shouldn't spend too much time, wasting time, you might say, on the dream, or why did he talk about it at all? Because there are dreams that are more than subconscious. And the point is to direct our consciousness to be able to, you might say, distinguish between those dreams that are subconscious and those dreams which are said to be superconscious. And so there are some positive things. We don't want to waste time, in other words, on the things that are not necessarily going to help us, and end up, by engaging in them and thinking about them, you end up concentrating and identifying with those subconscious thoughts, and you begin to bind yourself actually a little bit more to this dream that you are this body. But if we pay attention and learn to be able to distinguish between subconscious and superconscious, there's actually some positive benefits of dreaming. They can give us insight. They can help us solve problems that are just below the surface of the conscious mind. And they can sometimes be prophetic and predictive, in other words, and they can have sometimes some hidden meaning. And superconscious dreams can give us some guidance. And you could say the instruction that comes kind of on an intuitional level, we can kind of come to an understanding of our direction in life. And one of the things that Swami Sri Yukteswar said, and also Master said as well, is that by observing dreams, eventually we come to the point of realizing that even in this waking consciousness, this whole world is a dream world. It's very much like that. In other words, it seems so very real to us, but yet it's not what it seems. This world of duality is something more than that. And we find ourselves caught in this dream world of existence. And our goal in life is to wake up from that. Wake, soul, wake up from this dream world. And so consequently, when we begin to observe the nature of subconscious dreaming, we begin to compare. And oftentimes we begin in that comparison to realize that, oh, I'm dreaming at night, but when I wake up, this too is a dream. And the real solution to this is to awaken into superconsciousness. And so one final point about just dreaming subconsciously and spending too much time with it is it usually doesn't offer solutions. You may get insight, but into what your problems might be. And this is the problem with dream therapy and psychoanalysis. And they can help you perhaps see the problem, but do they give you solutions? And this comes from your own inner understanding, intuitionally, not from just an intellectual understanding of what a problem might be. So true superconscious dreams are something that have the potential of uplifting us. And superconsciousness, how can you tell the difference between subconscious and superconscious dreams? Well, superconscious dreams are uplifting. There's a sense of expanded awareness when you're in the dream state. I don't know if you've had this experience or not, but when you're dreaming, you awake in your dream. There's a sense of being awake and a sense of awareness. Sometimes even the awareness, that you're dreaming, that you're in a dream, that you're not in subconsciousness, that you're not in normal consciousness. And there's a sense of deep calmness, a sense of expansion, and a sense of, you might say, brightness about it, or joyfulness, or vividness. And your perception is intuitional as you're perceiving these dreams. Now, we should realize that most dreams, even superconscious dreams, have some mixture of subconsciousness in it. So you may be in a superconscious state, but there's elements of subconsciousness that are in there too that make it a little bit of fantastic, unreal as well. So there's usually a mixture, but there are also true prophetic superconscious dreams as well. And so it's good to remember most dreams are simply fantasy, and they have really no meaning particularly, if it is, it's something subconscious that's very personal to you. But there are superconscious dreams, and I think this is one of the reasons Paramhansa Yogananda brought this up, is to allow us to use those that are truly dreams of guidance, and to be able to perhaps they can be helpful to us. And also, going back to what we talked about last week, is to be able to eventually take this to the point where we're not simply passive, but we can use these superconscious dreams and learn to be able to dream and enter into a superconscious state consciously. I mean, by will, in other words. We can choose and learn that ability. Now, last week we talked about learning the ability to sleep at will. And this is one of the first steps to being able to do this if this topic interests you. Now, this is, as I say, this is not, if you're not interested, there's no necessity for you to do this, but because it is, some people do have this interest and their inclination is this way, and perhaps they dream a lot and they can remember their dreams. And if you have these experiences of superconscious dreams, this may be of interest in you. So it's not something you should do, but if you're inclined this way, the first step, of course, is to learn to be able to sleep at will, be able to wake up at will, and then be able to direct your consciousness by doing this into conscious, subconscious dreaming, and then ultimately to enter into a superconscious state, and also learning to superconsciously dream. And so going to sleep at will, waking up at will, this helps you direct your consciousness and gain control of that. Then you can begin practicing remembering your dreams. I've practiced this myself, and one of the recommended ways, and this is, I think Master even recommended this, is when you go to sleep at night, have beside you on a table, perhaps beside your bed, have a pen and pencil, or if you want, you can have your smartphone, your mobile phone, you can have the recording device ready. And when you awake in the middle of the night from a very vivid dream, immediately write notes down of the salient points. of the dream. And then because you know how it is with dreams, you forget them, very soon after you wake up. What was it? And they immediately begin to fade. But if you have that pen and pencil and write it down, and when you awaken, try to resist the temptation to start thinking of other things, and train yourself by practice to just write them down. And then you'll find that, and you go back to sleep. Or I find that some of my most vivid dreams are the ones that come to me just before I get up in the morning to go about my daily work. And it's probably, I remember those because they're the last dream cycle of the day. And if you write them down and then you think about them, you can recall from those dreams some of the incidents from those dreams. And in this way, you train yourself. And a little technique that Master gave, he said, to practice dreaming at will, he says, sit in a dim room just before you start to feel sleepy, and it's make the room dim. And then with half open eyes, steadily and simultaneously look at a portion of the room and try to memorize every detail of the room. Now, if I was trying to go to sleep in this room, I would look over it. I would probably gaze at, there's over in the corner there's a camera, and we're not using that camera, but it's very distinctive. And I would try to memorize that camera, every detail of it. And it says, while doing this, will yourself to see all the objects you're seeing, and will yourself to remember them and try to see them in a dream. He says, now fall asleep. Again, remember, by this time you've trained yourself to be able to fall asleep at will. Fall asleep while you're while you're visualizing and memorizing what you're looking at. And this way you'll be able to eventually be able to produce that image in a dream. And this, of course, sounds simple, but it's not. But Master, apparently he could do this. And eventually you'll be able to produce anything you wish in a dream. And from this, you'll be able to become conscious while you're in the dream state. And Yogananda Ji called this a semi-conscious or semi-superconscious type dreaming. You're creating a dream, but it's not a superconscious dream, but yet it has an element of that superconsciousness in it. And in this way, you'll be able to dream at will. And from this, you can actually, now this is a little bit far out there. He says, but from this, if you can do this, you eventually be able to develop the ability to materialize your thoughts. In other words, it gives you, that's related to that power. If you want something, like Master would often think he wanted to accomplish something. So he would think very powerfully about something he wanted to accomplish, and then he would be able to materialize it. And you could say this is in the same way. First, you materialize it in a dream world. And if that same ability can be used to develop, eventually, Master said, even you can eventually develop the ability to produce not these semi-superconsciousness dreams, but produce true superconscious visions at will. Now, this is something very, very far out there, but it shows you the direction that we're going. And so this, I think, in my study a little bit of reading scientifically about dreaming over the years, there's something called lucid dreaming. And I think this, what Master was calling this ability to consciously dream images, it is semi-superconscious dreaming. This is probably what lucid dreaming is be able to go into a dream state and direct your dreams. Swami once mentioned that when he was young, he wanted to be a playwright. And he said when he would write a script about the playwright. He says at night when he would dream about his play that he'd writing, and he would work the play out in sequence in his dream. And then he said, oh, that character, no, that's not right. and he would erase that part of the script and he would rewrite it again in his dream world. And he would rewrite the script and edit it, you might say, in the dream state. And it was, this was before he had met Master, but he just had this natural ability to do that. It was just something he was from past lifetimes, perhaps. But he would dream in that way, and he would probably be able to do this, what science calls a lucid dreaming state, a consciously dream. Now, superconscious dreams come to many of us from time to time. And I said they're characterized by this state of elevated consciousness. Now, Master said, if we can get to the state of being able to invite those superconscious dreams, they can give us a sense of direction. And there are certain elements to those dreams that are symbolic. Now, fantasy dreams that are from the subconscious do have symbolism in them, but that symbolism tends to be specific to our own superconscious self, our own nature. So something may symbolize something in a fantasy of our own, but it's not necessarily, that doesn't mean another person is going to have that same symbolism. It's unique to us individually. But Master made an interesting point. He said there are symbols in this world that are superconscious, that are universal, and that tend to apply to everybody. Now, I find that very interesting, but remember that thoughts are universally rooted. This is something Master said, and we open ourselves to those thoughts and we pick up on those thoughts. We draw them to us. We don't create our thoughts. We draw those thoughts from the superconsciousness. Now, in the subconscious, those things that are thoughts in our memory, and we can manipulate those thoughts in our own unique way. But if in a superconscious dream, we attune ourselves to the superconscious, those universal symbols come to us directly without our individual manipulation, and they do have some interpretive value in that way. And I've got a list here of some of those symbols, which I'd like to share with you. Well, actually, there's a few things that falling in dreams indicates that the dreamer should control sexual thoughts. Oftentimes, don't you find yourself, you're falling, and it tends to be related to sexual urges and thoughts. Dreams of temptations hint that temptation is not a physical but a mental reality and can be controlled by the development of will. Beating or hurting others in dreams represents that the conscious mind should forego revengeful thoughts. Seeing a lady in dreams signifies marriage. Now, I suppose that applies to men more than to women. Maybe it's the opposite for ladies. Seeing a house, a mine, an office, furniture, palaces, shops, or money represents approaching prosperity. And he adds this little line, if some effort is made in this direction. Sadness in a dream represents a looming sickness. Flying in the light indicates spiritual development. Flying in the dark indicates prosperity. Waterfalls represent the end of bad karma. Meaningless dreams are really nothing but comedy dreams. A huge fire represents the burning of past karma. This is interesting, a bonfire or something like that. And if one can even, I would suspect, if one can even mentally cooperate with that and throw one's attachments into that fire, it would actually be quite helpful. Light and the ocean signify vast perceptions of self-realization and meditation. Water represents the results of divine perceptions attainable by meditation. A river suggests plying up the river of life force in the spine through yoga and meditation. A boat indicates that one should seek the right guru. Angels represent divine friends and saints in past lives who remember us and try to redeem us through silent suggestions in their presence. Scriptures represent that the dreamer should follow the path of wisdom and study to attain his desired goal. Saints represent the sages whom we especially adore in the past. Temples indicate that one should follow the teachings of the masters. Churches indicate that one should worship God deeply. Altars represent communion with God or marriage with an extremely divine soul. Cloudless skies represent a serene, pure path of communion with God. Flowers represent the budding of blossoms of created wisdom. Sunny lights signify astral visions. Auroras represent the cosmic astral lights. The moon indicates that one should combine devotion with astral visions perceived in meditation. A feeling of expansion in space represents the experience of omnipresence during meditation. So you can see there's a number of these perceptions if one is awareness. And I think if you feel these, my experience has been this: sometimes if I'm a little bit, have a bit of a superconscious dream, I have to resist the temptation to get excited, because calmness is what will, and this applies to things consciously as well. If you're meditating, you have some experience, you're in a state of deep calmness, but sometimes the temptation to become excited by it comes in, and of course it dispels it. And we have to go into that deeper state, and your intuition will be your guide, and you'll intuitively go into these deepening states. Now, sometimes I do want to make a caution, and I want to speak a little bit more about this next week, actually, is that sometimes we have to be cautious when we can awaken into a state of awareness in the midst of our sleep. And we can actually, it's a negative thing. Somebody asked me a question, which I'm not going to answer this week, I'll wait till next week, about, you could say, awakening outside of one's body, one's astral body outside of one's body. And these things happen, and we have to be cautious because we can also contact negative influences in that state. So if we're pursuing dreams, they need to be of an uplifted nature, calm, joyful, expansive, and then hold on to those significant, when you awaken from that, particularly if it's a superconscious dream, when you awaken, you may not understand what that dream was about, but if it was an uplifting dream, write down a few of the salient points of that dream. Hold on to them, and writing will help because they can fade. And then meditate upon it and think about it in that way. And your intuition will give you some guidance of what those points were. And as I mentioned last week, throughout history, there are stories of those who were perceptive and able to interpret dreams in superconscious dreams. And you gain this ability if you pay attention. But the important point of all of this is the ability to control our consciousness from subconsciousness, consciousness, to superconscious awareness. And I think through the process of dreaming and paying attention to dreams, if it helps us in that regard, then it's something that could be positive. You could say, generally speaking, that and this is what Yogananda said, generally, when these superconscious symbols that I mentioned begin to appear frequently in your dreams while you're in a state of deep calmness, it is a sign of spiritual progress that we're moving in a good direction. So we want to pay attention to those particularly. And it's important to remember that all dreams, even subconscious ones, have some significance, but not all dreams are true. And we need to develop that ability to distinguish between what's true and what's not true. And that comes through our intuitional ability. You could say that worldly people have worldly dreams and active people have dreams of activity. People that have some evil tendencies, their dreams will tend to reflect that. And same thing, matter of fact, people of practical nature tend to dream of daily occurrences. And what about nightmares and fears? Well, what Yogananda said, he says, if you have fears or dreams of fears and worries, they generally indicate that some sort of change of attitude is necessary. And because our magnetism is drawing those to us. And so in that way, they may be fearful dreams, but they can be instructive. What is our magnetism? Why are we magnetically drawing those to us? And so pay attention. But pay attention specifically to those dreams which are super conscious. And if you have any dream that seems to be meaningful to you, when you awaken immediately, sit up and meditate and pray at that time, Master, God, Divine Mother, what are you trying to tell me? And what is this dream trying to say to me? But do this in a state of non-attachment, because we don't know. It can be something that takes a great deal of development individually for each one of us to be able to get that to that point where we can truly interpret our dreams properly. And so consequently, it can be a useful tool. But remember, not everybody is inclined to use every tool in their toolbox. The more important tool, of course, is to meditate. The more important tool is to ask Master to guide you in every situation. The more important tool is to have devotion in everything that you do. And from that, you'll see that generally that your dream, you'll actually start to become, as you develop spiritually, your conscious mind begins to purify, you might say, the subconscious mind. You'll generally begin to find that your dreams will become more vivid. There's more sense of divine presence in them. And this is a good sign. But if you're not one of those who naturally dreams, or you totally forget, at all times your dreams, don't worry about it. This is, and you're not one of those perhaps who's meant to be analyzing them. And that can be a good thing too, because as I began, we don't want to become self-involved in these. These are for our entertainment, and particularly as we develop for our education. And so use them in a good, proper way, in that way. So now I want to make a point here. Some of you are going to ask me, that list I read of symbolism, I was reading it from a master talks about these things in pretty much everything that I've talked about today and in last week. Some of what last week is in Master's early writings, the Perceptive Lessons, but most of us don't have access to that, or some of it's in the self-realization lessons. But there's a very good book that I'd like to recommend if you're interested in this topic, and it's available on Kindle. And it's a book written by Savitri Simpson, a devotee here, long time, many decades, who's done quite a bit of study on many of Master's teachings. And I've got a copy of the book here. It's called The Meaning of Dreaming. And I don't believe it's in print in India, and even here in America, it's a little bit hard to find, but it is available on Kindle. Now, if you don't have a Kindle, but you do have a computer, and probably even on your smartphone, you can download an app, a Kindle app, and then you can go on Kindle at Ananda Publications site, and you can download it. I believe I looked myself, and it was for 200 rupees. You can get a copy of this, and it has much of what I've talked about in these last couple of weeks.